100 years ago, a man sat in a room in Switzerland and wrote things about the human mind that most people in his time were not ready to hear. He wrote about the parts of ourselves we hide from the world. About the patterns we repeat without understanding why. About the dreams that carry messages we ignore. About the masks we wear so long we forget we are wearing them. About the deep, unconscious forces that quietly shape every decision, every relationship, every moment of our lives. His name was Carl Gustav Jung. And he was not just ahead of his time. He was ahead of our time. Because everything he wrote about the shadow, the persona, the unconscious, the search for wholeness is not ancient history. It is your life. Right now. Today. In the relationships you are navigating, the patterns you are stuck in, the identity you are performing, and the deeper self you have been trying to find. Today we are going to walk through 7 of his most important lessons. Not in academic language. Not in the language of textbooks and therapy offices. In plain, honest, usable language that you can take into your actual life before this video is over. Because Jung did not build these ideas for scholars. He built them for anyone willing to look honestly at the full picture of who they are. That takes courage. But the people watching this have it. Let us begin. Lesson 1. Your unconscious mind is running more of your life than you know. The first lesson is the foundation of everything Jung ever wrote. And it is one of the most uncomfortable truths in all of psychology. You are not as in control of yourself as you think you are. Not because you are weak. Not because you are unintelligent. But because the vast majority of what drives your behavior, your choices, your emotional reactions, and your recurring patterns operates below the level of conscious awareness. Jung described the mind as an iceberg. The part above the water, the thoughts you are aware of, the decisions you think you are making consciously, is small. The part below the surface is enormous. And it is down there, in the dark water, that most of the real action is happening. He called this the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious contains everything from your individual life that has been forgotten, suppressed, or never fully processed. Old wounds. Unresolved conflicts. Memories that shaped you before you had words for them. The collective unconscious goes even deeper. Jung believed that beneath the personal layer every human being shares a deeper unconscious layer inherited across generations containing what he called archetypes. Universal patterns and figures that appear across all human cultures, all mythologies, all religions, all storytelling. The hero. The shadow. The wise old man. The great mother. The trickster. These archetypes are not just literary concepts. They are active forces in the human psyche. And whether you are aware of them or not, they are influencing the shape of your inner life. The lesson here is not to feel out of control. The lesson is to get curious about what is operating beneath the surface. Because what you do not examine does not disappear. It simply works without your permission. And the moment you begin to bring the unconscious into conscious awareness, the moment you start to see the patterns, name the forces, examine the wounds, you begin to reclaim the authorship of your own life. That is one of the most empowering things a human being can do. Lesson 2. The mask you wear is not who you are. The second lesson hits close to home for almost everyone. Jung identified what he called the persona, named after the masks worn by actors in ancient Greek theater. The persona is the version of yourself you present to the outside world. The professional self. The social self. The put-together self. The self that knows which parts of you are acceptable to show and which parts need to stay hidden. Every functioning person has a persona. We all adapt our behavior to different contexts. That is not dishonesty. That is social intelligence. The danger Jung identified is a different one. It is when you become so identified with the mask that you forget there is a face underneath it. When the role you play becomes the only self you know. When you perform the character so consistently and so convincingly that you lose access to everything the character was built to protect. This is why people reach what looks like the peak of success, the career, the status, the recognition, the achievements, and feel completely empty inside. Because they built all of it as the persona. And the persona, no matter how well constructed, cannot feel genuine fulfillment. Only the real self underneath it can feel that. Jung believed that one of the essential tasks of psychological development is learning to hold the persona lightly. To use it as a tool for navigating social reality without mistaking it for your identity. The questions worth sitting with from this lesson are simple but not easy. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when there is nothing to perform and no one to perform for? What do you actually think, feel, want, and believe underneath all the adaptation? Those answers are the beginning of something real. Lesson 3. Everything you deny in yourself controls you from the inside. This is the lesson that changes people most profoundly when they truly understand it. Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is not simply your dark side in the dramatic sense. It is more specific and more personal than that. It is the collection of everything you have rejected about yourself over the course of your life. Everything that was not welcomed, not acceptable, not safe to express. The anger that was too much. The ambition that was called arrogance. The neediness that was called weakness. The sexuality that was called shameful. The grief that was called self-pity. The joy that was called showing off. All of it went somewhere. Not away. Somewhere. Into the shadow. Into the part of yourself that lives just out of sight, just below the threshold of what you are willing to acknowledge. And here is the lesson Jung spent years trying to communicate. Whatever you push into the shadow does not stay quietly in the shadow. It finds other exits. It comes out as disproportionate rage at a particular kind of person. It comes out as an intense, almost irrational judgment of behaviors in others that, if you look honestly, mirror something you have refused to acknowledge in yourself. It comes out in the patterns you cannot break. The relationships that keep ending the same way. The self-sabotage that appears every time you get close to something you genuinely want. Jung wrote that the shadow is 90% pure gold. What he meant is that the parts of yourself you have rejected are not inherently bad. They are simply unintegrated. They are power that has been misdirected because it has never been consciously worked with. The person who reclaims their anger does not become violent. They become someone with clear limits and genuine conviction. The person who reclaims their ambition does not become arrogant. They become someone who pursues their potential without guilt. The person who reclaims their need for connection does not become clingy. They become someone capable of genuine intimacy. The shadow, when integrated, becomes energy, creativity, vitality, authenticity. The lesson is not to become your shadow. The lesson is to stop pretending it does not exist, and start having a conscious relationship with it. Lesson 4. You project onto others what you have not faced in yourself. The fourth lesson follows directly from the third and is one of the most practically useful things Jung ever articulated. He called it projection. Projection is the psychological mechanism by which you take something from your own unconscious, something you have not acknowledged, not integrated, not made peace with, and you see it in someone else instead. You do not experience it as projection. You experience it as simply seeing clearly. As having an accurate read on that person or situation. But the intensity of the reaction, the disproportionate charge it carries, is the giveaway. When someone triggers you in a way that seems bigger than the situation warrants, Jung would say, pay attention. That charge is not just about them. Something in what they are doing or being is landing on something inside you that has not been looked at. The person who judges others most harshly for arrogance is often carrying unacknowledged pride. The person most disturbed by someone else's neediness is often suppressing a deep need for connection they have never allowed themselves. The person most hostile towards someone else's success is often sitting on top of an ambition they have told themselves they do not have. This is not always true. Sometimes a judgment is just a judgment and a reaction is just a reaction. But Jung's invitation is to pause at the moments of strongest emotional charge and ask the honest question: what is this showing me about myself? This practice applied consistently over time is one of the most transformative things a person can do. Because every projection you reclaim is a piece of yourself you get back. A piece of energy that was being used to see yourself in other people that can now be used to know yourself directly. Lesson 5. Your life has a meaning and it is your job to find it. The fifth lesson moves into territory that surprised many of Jung's contemporaries because it sounds more like philosophy or even spirituality than psychology. But Jung was clear. A life without meaning is a life in psychological crisis. And the search for meaning is not a luxury or a philosophical indulgence. It is a fundamental human need as real and as urgent as the need for food or safety or connection. He saw this in his patients constantly. People who had everything the culture said they should want: wealth, status, family, security, and were drowning in depression, anxiety, and emptiness. Not because their external lives had failed them, but because their inner lives had never been developed. Because the question of meaning had never been seriously asked. Jung believed that meaning does not come from outside. It is not assigned by culture or career or relationship. It emerges from the inside, from the process of becoming more fully yourself. From aligning your external life with the deeper currents of your inner one. He called this process individuation, the lifelong movement toward wholeness. Toward integrating all the parts of yourself, the known and the unknown, the celebrated and the rejected, into something unified and genuine. Individuation is not a destination. It is a direction. And the people who are moving in that direction, who are genuinely engaged with the question of who they are and what they are here to do, tend to experience a quality of life that is harder to measure but immediately recognizable. A sense of being in the right place. Of living from the inside out rather than the outside in. Of a life that, even with all its difficulty, feels like it belongs to them. That is what meaning feels like. And Jung spent his life insisting that it is available to everyone willing to do the work of finding it. Lesson 6. Your darkest experiences carry your greatest potential for growth. The sixth lesson is one that is incredibly difficult to receive in the middle of suffering, but becomes more true the more life you have lived. Jung believed that the places where we are most wounded are also the places where the most growth is available. He was deeply influenced by the ancient alchemical tradition, not as a literal science but as a psychological metaphor. The alchemists sought to transform base metal into gold. Jung saw in that image a perfect description of the inner work, the transformation of what is raw, painful, and unprocessed in human experience into something of genuine value. He introduced the concept of the wounded healer, the idea that the person who has genuinely wrestled with their own darkness, who has gone into their own pain and come out the other side with understanding, has access to a kind of wisdom and compassion that cannot be taught in any other way. This is why the therapist who has done their own work is more effective than the one who has only studied theory. This is why the leader who has experienced genuine failure carries a different quality of wisdom than the one whose path has been smooth. This is why the person who has survived loss and grief and betrayal and come through it intact has something to offer the world that cannot be manufactured. Your hardest experiences are not interruptions to your development. They are often the central material of it. Jung was not romantic about suffering. He did not say pain is good or that you should seek it. He said that pain, when it is turned toward and worked with rather than avoided and suppressed, becomes one of the most powerful sources of transformation available to a human being. The wound, integrated, becomes the gift. Lesson 7. The goal is not perfection, it is wholeness. The seventh and final lesson is the one that ties everything together. And in many ways it is the most radical thing Jung ever said, because it runs directly against the message most of us received about what we are supposed to be working toward. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization. With becoming the best version of yourself. With fixing your flaws, eliminating your weaknesses, polishing every rough edge until you are something close to perfect. Jung looked at that project and said that is not the goal. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become whole. And wholeness is a completely different thing from perfection. Perfection means eliminating what is difficult, uncomfortable, and inconvenient about yourself. It means curating a version of yourself that is all strength and no vulnerability, all light and no shadow, all success and no failure. Wholeness means something almost opposite. It means including everything. The strength and the wound. The clarity and the confusion. The generosity and the selfishness. The love and the rage. The person the world sees and the person only you know exists. It means stopping the war against yourself and beginning a different kind of relationship, one of honest, compassionate, ongoing inquiry into the full complexity of who you are. Jung believed that the most psychologically developed people are not the ones who have eliminated their shadow. They are the ones who know it is there and have learned to work with it consciously. Not the ones who never feel fear, but the ones who move through it with awareness. Not the ones who have no wounds, but the ones who have turned their wounds into understanding. Wholeness is harder than perfection in some ways. Because it requires you to stop rejecting parts of yourself and start integrating them. It requires honesty that is sometimes painful and self-awareness that is sometimes uncomfortable. But it is also more sustainable. More real. More genuinely alive. Because a perfect person is a performance. A whole person is a human being. And the world does not need more performances. It needs more human beings willing to show up as the full, complicated, honest truth of who they actually are. 7 lessons from a man who spent his life in the territory most people spend their lives avoiding. Know that your unconscious is running more of your life than you think. Understand that the mask you wear is not who you are. Face what you have denied because it is controlling you from the inside. Reclaim your projections because they are showing you yourself. Take seriously the question of what your life means. Turn toward your darkest experiences because they carry real gold. And above all, stop pursuing perfection and start pursuing wholeness. These are not comfortable lessons. Jung never promised comfort. He promised something more valuable. He promised that the person willing to look honestly at the full picture of who they are, the light and the shadow, the known and the unknown, the celebrated and the rejected, would find something waiting for them on the other side of that honesty. Not a perfect life, but a real one. Not a curated self, but a whole one. Not the person the world decided you should be, but the person you actually are underneath all of it. And in a world that is constantly asking you to perform, to optimize, to present the best version while hiding the rest, choosing to be whole is one of the most quietly revolutionary things a human being can do. Jung did the work. He mapped the territory. He left the lights on. Now it is your turn to walk into it. If this opens something in you, share it with someone who is ready to do the same. And if you are new here, welcome. Subscribe and turn on the bell. We go deep on psychology, self-understanding, and the ideas that actually change how you live from the inside out. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." It is time to wake up. See you next tomorrow.